Hey Calvary kids, I'm so excited that you're joining us again for another week of Jumpstart Worship. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about the early life of Jesus. And today, we're going to see him begin his ministry time by calling his disciples to follow him in Matthew chapter 4. Now this morning, we're going to learn what it meant for his disciples to follow Jesus and how for all of us that same call exists today. That Jesus calls for us to follow him, and how in our lives we can make choices to follow him every single day. But before we get into any of that, I know that you guys love worshiping together, so what we're going to do is I'm going to encourage all of you to go ahead and stand up wherever you're watching at, and let's get ready to sing and worship together this morning.
I see the way you live. I see the way you love. I want to live like you. Oh, I want to love the way you do. I don't wanna wait forever. I know that your plans are greater. I am ready now, 'cause there's nothing better, no. Whoa, and now I know. Oh, I wanna live fully alive. Oh, I wanna live fully alive. I wanna live for you in everything I do, 'cause I wanna live fully alive. Fully alive. I wanna live. I see the way you live. I see the way you love. And I want to live like you. Oh, I want to love the way you do it. I don't wanna wait forever. I know that your plans are greater. I am ready now, 'cause there's nothing better, no. Whoa, and now I know. Oh, I wanna live fully alive. Oh, I wanna live fully alive. I wanna live for you in everything I do, 'cause I wanna live fully alive. Fully alive. Oh, I wanna live. No, I'm never looking back, never looking back. No, I'm never looking back, never looking back. No, I'm never looking back, never looking back. Yeah, he lives inside, and now I am alive. Oh, I wanna live fully alive. Oh, I wanna live fully alive. I wanna live for you in everything I do, 'cause I wanna live fully alive. Fully alive. Oh, I wanna live fully alive.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed those few quick moments of worship together today. I know for me that one of the things that I've really missed about not being here for Jumpstart is getting to worship with you guys. Getting to sing and take time to praise and worship together with you each Sunday morning. But I'm glad that we're able to do it, even if it's in this kind of different way. And I hope that you're enjoying it but missing it as well. Now today, I want us to take a moment and we're going to dive into Matthew chapter 4. Because in Matthew chapter 4, we find this really cool story of Jesus calling his disciples to follow him. Now, sometimes when we think about Jesus and we think about the stories that we read in the New Testament, and we read particularly in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the disciples, they're kind of always there. In our minds, sometimes maybe we think that these people had just always been with Jesus, or that they were just always there, or that they all grew up together and had been friends for their entire life, or something like that. But what we see is that Jesus, as he was growing up, that he had a childhood that probably resembled a lot of ours, that he probably had points where he had to clean his room, and he probably had moments where he was outside playing with his brothers and sisters and things like that. And as we read this about Jesus, we come to Matthew chapter 4, and we find and we see that Jesus is getting ready to begin his time of ministry. That Jesus is getting ready to start traveling around and telling other people and performing miracles and influencing other people, and he's getting ready to go out. And so he goes and he calls his disciples to follow him. Now the Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 4, verse 18, that Jesus was walking alongside the Sea of Galilee. And as he was walking, that he bumps into these guys that are there that are fishing, or they had just finished fishing and they were back fixing their nets and preparing their boat. And Jesus walks up to him and he simply says, "Follow me." Now, this word follow, we all understand and we know what it means to follow someone. Maybe for some of you, the first thing that pops into your brain when you think about following someone is you think about the line leader of your class. Now, I know that line leader, it changes, every week, and we all get to take turns at it, but we know that wherever the line leader goes, that we're following. Because normally where they're going is where we want to be. If they're going to the lunchroom, if they're going outside for recess, or whatever it might be, wherever the line leader is going, we want to follow to find out what's going to happen. Now, for some of you, you may say, "Hey, listen, it's been a minute since I've been in school, and I don't even remember what a line leader is." And so maybe for you at your house, maybe you have a pet that's sitting around, or you have a pet around your house, and your pet follows you wherever you go. Especially if you go in the kitchen and you open the refrigerator and your pet hears that, they're following you pretty quickly saying, "Hey, what can I have? What do you have for me?" And maybe for some of you, you're sitting there and you're thinking, "You know who always follows me around? It's my little brother or my little sister. They follow me everywhere. I can't get a moment away from them without turning around and them being right behind me." We understand what it means to follow someone. We understand what it means to follow behind and go wherever they go and to do what they do. Well, Jesus comes to the disciples in this moment and he calls them and he says, "I want you to follow me." Now, this was a big moment for the disciples, because the disciples, as we see in these verses 18 through 22 in Matthew chapter 4, is that they were fishermen. That they were in the middle of projects, they were in the middle of working on things, and Jesus called them to follow him. And the Bible tells us that they didn't finish what they were doing. They didn't take time to think about it. It says that immediately, they followed Jesus. Now, we have a lot of things going on in our lives. We have a lot of things that we're doing, a lot of the things that we're trying to finish. Maybe it's an art project, or maybe it's a sporting season, or maybe it's a TV show that we're watching or something. We have a lot of things that we want to finish. I'm sure the disciples in this moment, if you would have asked them, they would have said, "Oh yeah, I've got to finish this, and I've got to finish doing this, and I need to take care of this." But they put all of that aside to follow Jesus. And the reason that they did that is not because Jesus demanded it of them, or Jesus said, "Follow me right now or you'll never get another chance." The reason that they did that is because they realized the importance of following Jesus. See, they knew that when they began following Jesus, that it was going to change their life forever. That everything that they had done leading up to this moment would be changed and would be different. They realized and knew that they were following Jesus, and that was going to change who they were and everything about them. And so they left everything else behind and said, "Today I'm committing to follow you above everything else." And they did it immediately. Now, the other thing I think is important about this is that not only did they follow Jesus immediately, but they followed Jesus to the end. We see later as we read through Matthew that Jesus' disciples, that they're with him in the Garden of Gethsemane, and they're with him as he's arrested and getting ready to go on trial. That his disciples, that they were faithful and they stayed with him and they followed him every day. It wasn't something that they followed Jesus for a little bit alongside the Sea of Galilee, and then when their feet got tired, they said, "Okay, you know what? I think I might have made a mistake. I'm going to go back home now. I'm going to head back to what I was doing and finish that up." They said, "We're going to follow Jesus above everything else, and we're committing to it for our life." It's important for us to remember that not only did the disciples commit to follow Jesus immediately, but they said that they would follow him. They decided to follow him with their life, for the rest of their life. They made a decision right then and there that said, you know what? Following him, following Jesus is more important than anything else we could accomplish. Following Jesus, it's more important than whatever we're having to leave behind. And we're not taking any time to do it. We're going to do it immediately, and we're in it for a long time. We're in it for life because we know that this is going to change who we are. Now, what I love about this story of the disciples that we see in Matthew chapter 4, and what I love about it for us today, is that the call that Jesus gives to his disciples is the same call that we have today. That Jesus, to each one of us, no matter how old we are or how young we are or what grade we're in or anything like that, the call to follow Jesus is there for all of us. And Jesus said to his disciples very simply, he said, "Follow me." And for each and every one of us today, for each and every one of us Jumpstarters, Calvary kids, that call is there for us. That Jesus says, hey, I want you to follow me. And it's up to us to decide, are we going to immediately put down all the things that we want to accomplish and the things that we want to do and follow him? Or are we going to let those things distract us? Are we going to let other things in our lives pull us away from the most important decision that we'll make? The decision to follow Jesus daily. To say, God, immediately I'm putting down everything else and I'm committing to following you with my life. And for all of us today, that's a decision that we have to make. It's a moment that we have to come to where we have to realize and understand and say, Jesus, I know that you have called me to follow you, and I am committing to follow you with my life.
You're the reason why our hearts are beating. You're everything we need. You're the reason for the songs we're singing. We sing because we're free. Come on, we'll let it rise up to our God
All right, well, I hope you've had another great week in Jumpstart Worship. I know that I've enjoyed being with you guys this way, even though it's a little bit different from what we normally do. Now, last week, we talked about you guys going outside and finding rocks to help us remember Jesus resisting temptation. So today, I'm going to give you a game that you can play with your family, your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, whoever you have in your house right now with you. And it's a simple game that you've probably all played before called Follow the Leader. So here's how you play. You're going to get everybody together in your living room, choose one person to be the leader, and they're going to begin to lead you around your house. I'm talking over couches, under tables, through bedrooms, all over the house. And your job is to follow them no matter where they go and no matter what they do. And as you play that, I want you to remember and think about the story that we heard today from Matthew chapter 4. How Jesus has called us to follow Him no matter what. Well, I sure do miss you guys, and I hope you have an incredible week, and I can't wait to see you next week in Jumpstart Worship.